Today we're going to be making a 3D color wheel. We are going to be using a pigment set of primary colors. Of course, we're using paints, not light. We're using paints, so we're using a pigment color scheme. Where the primary colors, again, are magenta, yellow, and cyan. There are also going to be some secondary colors that we mix from those primaries, including purple, orange, and green. And then you're going to be taking each color, adding white to it to make a tint, adding black to it to make a shade, and you are going to end up with something a little like this. Woohoo! Alright everyone, so today we're going to be making our 3D paper color wheels inspired by Yayoi Kusama. We are going to be using the following materials. We have watercolor paper, pencil, ruler, watercolor paints in the primaries and black and white, brush, scissors, hole punch, compass, cup full of water but only to the mark, and a mixing palette. So once you have all your supplies, the first thing you're going to do is set up your paper. So you're going to start with your paper, holding it the tall way, the portrait way, aka vertically, and you are going to make some marks to set it up. Look how fast I did that. So you're going to first take your sheet of paper and you're going to fold it in half to get that middle crease. Once you've done that, you are going to be measuring 4.5 inches in from the side and making a line here, 4.5 inches from the end here, and you're going to be connecting those with your ruler. So you're using the inches side, starting with 0 on one end, measuring to 4, and then halfway between 4 and 5, 4.5, make a tick mark, measure to the bottom, make a tick mark, and then connect those two to get a beautiful straight line. Once you have the line and the line, then you are going to be making your dots. So the middle is going to be 3 inches down from the top. So again, lining up my ruler at 0, I'm going to follow this line and make a tick mark at 3. Teeny tiny tick mark, you don't really want this one to show up. Tick mark at 3, then starting again, I'm going to line the 0 up at the middle of the page here, and a tick mark at 3. Once you have that, you're going to be using your compass. Now, we haven't used compasses before, but the way they work is you line up this center brass part with whichever point is the middle of your circle. And then you're going to be putting your pencil into one of these dots here. Now, whichever dot you use, that is how big of a circle it's going to be. So the farther away from the center, the bigger the circle. The closer towards the center, the smaller the circle. For this one, we're going to be using the closer to the circle dot of E1. See how we have E1 right here, and there's 2? You want the dot that's closer. I drew it up here too. So that's the circle. We have E1. There's 2 dots. You choose the one that's closer. So I will start by lining up the brass part of my compass with that 3-inch mark. I'm going to put my pencil in the closer dot of E1. I'm pressing down pretty firmly with this finger, and I will go around, and that will draw a circle. You're going to do the same thing down here. Once you have your line here, 3-inch, 3-inch, and your circles, you are ready to move on. You're going to flip your paper over and make that same middle line down the center. Again, that middle line is 4.5 inches in from the edge. So 4.5 here, make a mark, 4.5 here, make a mark, and connect the two with a line. Once you have done that, then you are ready to cut them out. Cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it. Okay, you have your 2 circles and you have your scrap paper. Hold on to your scrap paper so that you can use it to test your colors as you're working. You're going to be showing the sequential color wheel order. while also demonstrating your painting skills by showing us value. You're going to be creating a tint and a shade of each color. So for example, on the magenta slice here, the top is a tint, the middle is magenta, the bottom is a magenta shade. So it will blend from light to true color to darker color. Then the next slice, once you open it up, so we have magenta, then orange, then yellow, then green, then cyan, then purple. And then the last two slices, one is going to be grayscale. That means a black to white or a white to black blend. And a free space where you can add any kinds of decorations or any other fancy painting techniques that you want to demonstrate and show off. So when we're done, we're going to have this 3D color wheel showing your blending, and I want an even value blend. So you'll be practicing that skill as well. At the end, we're going to be hanging these up, and people will be able to walk around them, kind of like a Yayoi Kusama installation. Watercolor is a little different from other paints because it's supposed to be very light and almost runny. I have my scrap over here to test. I'm going to start off with the lightest first, always starting from the top moving to the bottom, lightest to darkest. So I'm going to put some water in my watercolor. Now, I'm not trying to soften it up. I want it to be very, very runny. It is watercolor after all. It should have the texture of water and not of paint. Once I've had a decent amount on my brush kind of soaks it up. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my mixing palette. When my brush is very clean, I will also dip into my white. So I know I'm starting with my tint, magenta, and shade. Now I'm going to do a practice on my scrap of how to make those colors blend. I'm going to start off with just the whites. And I'm going to add the smallest, teeniest amount of magenta. You can't even tell the difference. And then I'm going to paint that in. Then I'm going to add another teeny amount of magenta, and I'm going to add that in. See how it's starting to get darker? And I add a teeny tiny bit more, and I add that in. Now, just the way that I'm painting right now, my colors are not blending. I'm not seeing a value shift here. So I'm going to go in with a clean brush and blend them, wipe over where the light and the dark kind of crisscross. Maybe even go in and get a little bit more pink to get those to start blending together. Add a little bit more. Go back in with water, the clean brush. Add a little bit more magenta to that white. So I can build up the color darkness by adding the darker color to the lighter color. But I can also build up darkness with layering. Because watercolor is kind of transparent, it's clear, you can see through it sometimes. When you put watercolor on top of other watercolor, the color builds up and it gets darker. Okay, now it looks like I'm almost ready to go to straight up just magenta. Let's try that. Beautiful. Then from here, you're going to do the same thing you did with the white, where you're going to get a little bit of black in your palette. Now it doesn't look like there's very much because, again, remember, this is non-normal paint. Now again, I'm adding the darker color to the lighter color. So I'm going to start with my regular magenta and I'm going to add the smallest amount of black possible. You can see that's already quite darker. Then I'm going to add a little bit more. Then I'm going to a little bit more. Now when you're going to be blending wet paint into wet paint, you need to make sure that you do it quickly before the paint dries or else it won't blend. So this value gradient right here that we see, the tint of magenta to the regular magenta to the shade of magenta, needs to be an even value gradient. And I'm going to be painting that the same way on here. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint the rest of my colors. The next one I would be painting would be yellow. So I can let this dry before I continue painting on it. Now, let's look at my yellow right now. It doesn't really look like there's very much paint in there at all, right? But see how there's just a little bit around in the corners? Now, that is more than enough paint because once the paint gets contact with water, it loosens up, and it's not supposed to take up a lot of space. So it might look like you don't have very much paint left when you actually have more than enough to finish. Be very careful with black because it's very, very overpowering, and if you put it with any other color, it will take over. Now that I finished this one, I'm going to let this dry and go back to my magenta. Now next to my magenta should be green. Now the last two have been pretty easy because we've been able to get the color straight from the pan, but now you have to mix your colors. So start with your lighter color first, always, always. You're going to have to mix an amount of this green color to use because we can't just get more, and you can never mix the same color twice. Now, since you're painting two complementary colors next to each other, when they mix, they actually make brown. So you want to be very careful not to paint the red over onto the green or the green over onto the red. It will not be pretty. Okay, so now I finished the first slide. I have magenta and green together. And I'm going to let it dry before I start painting the back cyan and my free space. Okay, so now I have my first two sides, my primary magenta, my primary yellow, and my two secondary green and purple. Now, once they are dry, I'm going to be flipping them over and painting the other side. So on the other side from magenta is the free space, and the other side of green is going to be cyan. On the other side of yellow is going to be orange. On the other side of purple is going to be grayscale. Alright, so now once you have finished all your painting, our last few steps of putting it together are going to action. So you're going to need to be cutting a flag. Now notice, on the blue and free one, the slit is at the bottom, and on the grayscale and orange one, the slit is at the top. Now both of the slits only go down to the middle point. Now if you need to go back and remake that point at 3 inches, you can go ahead and do that, but I can still see mine already, so I'm gonna do that. Again, making sure that it's not backwards. The dark should be at the bottom, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut the orange and grayscale one first from the top to the middle point, stopping at that middle point. Okay. And then I'm going to be cutting my cyan and free one from the bottom to the top, again stopping at that middle point. Okay, we need to make our hole punches so that we can hang them. So you're gonna line them up, making sure that the lines match on either side, and you're gonna do 2 hole punches on either side of the line. So when I'm done, again, these two are going to fit into each other, like so.